You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
Sons of the Shoe rides again. Nick Wilson, Spencer German. And obviously spring practices roll on in Columbus. They practice on Monday. They practice on Wednesday, and then they'll also practice on Friday. And, of course, this is the second to last week before the spring game coming up at the end of next week. So plenty to get to. We've got a new Ohio State running backs coach. Deion Sanders said some Deion Sanders type stuff as well. But before we get into anything else, as always, we beg for your patronage. Please make sure to go ahead and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Sons of the Shoe on Apple, Spotify, 923thefan.com, the free Odyssey app. Have I mentioned Apple? And also, as you can see, our beautiful mugs right now, if you're looking on the 923 The Fan YouTube channel, please make sure to subscribe to that one, meaning the 923 The Fan YouTube channel, and like our videos as well. But Spencer, how you doing, buddy?
Can't complain. Excited, getting more and more excited by the day for the spring game here in we're 10 days out now, I think. So I've been checking the weather. Because I think I told you we're talking about trying to go down as like a family, make it like a little family thing. I think Jackson, my son, he gets in for free anyway. So it's kind of one of those deals where my wife was like, well, let's make sure the weather's going to be nice before we go all the way down there. And then we're just sitting in the rain with a toddler for 3 hours. So we're keeping an eye on that, but we're looking forward to potentially being down there for that. So it should be a good time.
I do love the idea of trying to monitor the weather 10 days out of anything. And it's by the way, very smart mom thinking there. Like, that's really like, as a dad, I would not think like that. I'd just be like, me want to go to spring game, me go to spring game. So very smart, but yeah, like there is visual comedy to me. The idea that like every day you just get up and like, all right, we got to make sure that forecast stays the same. Got to make sure we're still partly cloudy and 60 because if this goes to pot, we got to bail on this. And that's, again, this is why moms live longer than dads, folks. This kind of actual thinking. Yeah. Yeah,
she's definitely the smarter one, planning ahead that way. I mean, it is hard. Like 10 days out is always hard. I started looking up to 2 weeks out. I was like, what's it just saying right now? And it's changed like every day. So we'll probably just wait until the weekend, see what it says on Saturday, and then that'll be our big decision maker in terms of what we're going to do.
Well, as I mentioned, spring practice does roll on as we are right about 10 days out from the spring game coming up here on the 13th. But what's interesting about this conversation, what's interesting about this week is obviously the faux quarterback battle continue to rage on. And in the midst of that, Will Howard, who obviously is the new beans of the group here as he is transferring in from Kansas State, he got his black stripe removed. I believe it was on Saturday, and that is the same time that incoming center from Alabama, Seth McLaughlin, lost his black stripe. So I have no idea what that means for the quarterback battle that I don't really think is happening, but good for Will Howard, good for Seth McLaughlin.
Yeah, I was actually one of the things that I kind of learned more about this year was the idea that somebody who, like, I didn't even necessarily think people like Caleb Downs or Will Howard or some of these veteran guys that are transferring in, I didn't realize they made them do the black stripe thing. Like, I thought that was just kind of like when you're a freshman coming in or a new recruit who came in that it was like you earn your place here. And I get why they would still do that for some of these transfers, but I don't know. I guess it's like a symbolic thing anyway, so it doesn't really matter all that much. And we kind of joked about that, I know, a couple episodes ago, just whether or not it's more just an arbitrary, we're going to take this off because we think it's time for you to take it off, or if there's like actually parameters that come with taking it off. But I was kind of surprised to learn that, I guess, this spring season. But I agree with you, especially on the Will Howard front. Like, I don't know if it means anything in terms of the quarterback battle that they're saying they're having. I don't really think that it's as big of a thing that's happening as others do, as we've kind of laid out on the show. Do we know? I don't think I've seen any of the other quarterbacks have lost theirs, right? Other than Devin Brown's been there, so he doesn't have one.
There's been 6 guys. There's been the first guy to lose it was Jeremiah Smith. Then it was Brennan Schramm, the preferred walk-on out of Medina, Drew Aller's old buddy. Then it was Quinshawn Judkins and Caleb Downs, and then this weekend it was Will and it was Seth. So I mean, it's really only been those 6 guys, or at least reported.
So, is this the thing that when they announce, and for the audio audience, I'm doing finger quotes, when they announce Will Howard as the starting quarterback, is this going to be one of the things that, he was the first quarterback to lose his black stripe, so we just we felt really good about the spring that he had? Is that going to be one of the things that they cite as oh yeah, he was just ahead of the other guys, even though we kind of knew that the entire time?
I don't know. I think it'd be funny if they were Devin, obviously having had his black stripe removed. We love Devin, but it was Saturday. Will got his, with 2 weeks to go. We were just too impressed with that. And of course, it took Devin longer to lose his black stripe last year. It'd be funny if that actually was that reset the depth chart for the next year, up until they actually set it by going to practice and going to the spring game, and then obviously to training camp. It'd be really funny. It was just hey, yeah, I know you had 1,000 yards last year, but you're the number 4 receiver because it took you the longest to earn your stripe when you were here 3 years ago. I think that'd be very funny. I do like the idea. And I listen. Now I'm just talking out my ass a little bit. I do like the idea of having to re-earn it every year. I always thought that was something that was really impressive, but they don't do that. So I was just gonna say, if Ryan Day was a real tough ass like I would be as a head coach, that's how they do it.
Maybe that's since they don't do it that way, I was gonna say maybe that's what scared Kyle McCord away. Hey, Kyle, we're gonna make you re-earn your stripe. We're going to put the black stripe back on. You got to re-earn it. And he was like, yeah, I'm just going to go to Syracuse and have my orange stripe from the beginning, I guess. I don't know.
I don't even think they can afford an orange stripe. It's just they literally give you the zebra stripes gum. It's here is your stripe. And that's what you get at Syracuse. And then you have to reimburse them the 25 cents for the stick of gum.
They take the wrappers from the big red gum and they just lick them, and they put a bunch of those over the helmet.
No. You only get one thing of gum. And how you use it is up to you. No, I think it's probably I think, listen, with how this thing is built and was built, the whole point of this whole thing was not to have any surprises. So the idea, it's Jeremiah Smith and Brennan Schramm and literally all the big names, Quinshawn and Caleb and Will Howard and Seth. I will say, if Edric Houston got his black stripe off before those, I'd be a little surprised. If it was anybody, I think they got a tight end from Ohio, that dude. I'm not expecting that dude to be one of them. So this offseason was, kind of needed to fall out in a logical way. And I think it has, and I think it will. And I think spring practices, I believe Will Howard's going to be the starter. To me, it was okay, yeah, he lost his black stripe before, with 2 weeks to go to the spring game. I think that's a positive sign. And the Caleb Downs things too, because people have taken that as Caleb Downs is here and here to stay.
Yeah, I thought his sort of speech, I don't even know if it was a speech. It was kind of just a little pep talk that he had after they announced he had lost his black stripe. And we do have that audio, actually, which we'll play here for you in a second. But I thought that was the most interesting of these, because obviously just all the rumors and stuff that's going on in relation to could he leave in the spring portal window. Here, let me play the audio, because I had there's a specific reason why I think this matters in this. And I understand things can change, obviously, But there's a specific reason why I think this quote from Caleb Downs matters.
Got a black stripe of that! Hey man, this guy's been a great addition to the team and the culture. Former freshman All-American, newest member of BIA, Caleb Downs!
I appreciate y'all accepting me here. I'm glad to be here. Wouldn't want to be nowhere else. Go Bucks.
So the reason I think that matters, and again, things can change. Players can change their mind at the blink of an eye, especially nowadays with the NIL stuff. Somebody could come. I mean, look what happened with Caden Proctor, right? Somebody can slide to your DMs tomorrow and be like, "Hey, we can offer you more than Ohio State. Why did you say you come back to Alabama?" But the reason I think that him saying that matters is because he's saying it to the people that he has to like look in the eye every day. Like it's his teammates. It's not that he's saying it to the media in a press conference, right? Where, I mean, we know from all the years covering the Browns, Nick, like coaches and GMs, even players in press conferences, like they sit there and they lie to our faces all the damn time. Like we can't count on anything that they say in those instances. But when it's a player talking to his teammates, there's like a different level of respect between that group of people that I think him saying that to that group matters. Now, again, he could change his mind and it could change tomorrow. They could get through the spring game and somebody could show up with a bag of money and he's like, yeah, I'm actually going to leave. And I'm sure his teammates would support him because it's whatever's best for him, right? But at least that's what they always say. But I do think that it carries a little bit more weight when it's in that setting and to that group of people specifically that he's saying, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. You know, I'm happy you guys accepted me.
So I can hear what you're saying on that. I also just think, I would be kind of surprised if we're reading the tea leaves, I'd be surprised if Ohio State was going to give a black stripe to a guy they were worried about, leaving. If like you were worried about Caleb Downs doing the Caden Proctor, you probably would either make him work harder to earn it, or you'd probably wait till after the spring portal to do it. Like, and remember, there's no set time. The black stripe has to be removed. So, I mean, I think that's kind of interesting. I think it's, again, I was never, to me, with the Caleb Down thing, it always just came down to, well, you never know, right? Because we don't know Caleb Downs, and even, people around the program, they're still getting to know him. So, like, it was one of those moments where to see him get the black stripe removed, to see his reaction, okay, all right. It still wouldn't surprise me because nothing surprises me when it comes to the portal anymore. But at least now you can make you feel like, okay, well, it looks like we're actually okay. And, all that was just kind of spring paranoia maybe.
Yeah, and I think one of the more profound points that you made when we talked about the Caden Proctor thing was just the difference between Iowa money and Ohio State money, right? Like that's one of the bigger things to me. If you're talking about Bama luring a guy back because they have the money to give over what Iowa probably has to give, that makes a little bit of sense. We have seen over the last, really since the end of the season, since the end of the national championship, really, for Ohio State really was like the end of the regular season where they kind of put their heads together, really started pushing for people to help donate to the collective, help with the collective, and make a point in trying to keep players here and have this sort of bucket of money to use. And I think Ohio State's now kind of come out as at the forefront of this era because of that initiative this offseason. And it's probably for the best. I mean, look at the team that they've assembled because of that. And yeah, like they now have the money to go out and get some of these top name recruits, which they're also doing just through recruiting high school kids right now. There's been a whole bunch of talk about guys visiting and guys whittling their list down and Ohio State's near their top, or guys verbally committing to Ohio State, which that could always change, obviously. But, I think they have the money now to kind of compete at the top of this NIL era. And it's different from, they have the ability to actually maybe outbid a guy who maybe is thinking about Bama versus Iowa, who can only probably offer so much. That doesn't make it any less unfortunate for the Iowa situation and the fact that he's basically robbing you blind unless he gives the money back. But from Ohio State standpoint, like I think they're fine. And this certainly speaks to that. And I do think him saying it in that way. And to your point, like losing the black stripe when he did, I think all that should be kind of context as for Buckeyes fans to not be as panicked about the idea that he's leaving, like some, Bama fan 69 on Twitter is insinuating that he heard some rumor through Reddit that he's going to leave.
Don't forget, there are 3 X's next to the 69 on Bama fan 69XXX. All right, guys. What do you guys think about the 6 black stripes being removed? Obviously, that is one of the latest developments from spring practices. But when we come back, I don't know whether people are legitimately happy about the hire or whether they're just relieved that they actually made a hire. That's coming up. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. All right, guys, the long-awaited Columbus nightmare is over. That's right. The longer the coaching search went on, the more hostile people got to Tony Alford, which I think, again, is going to fulfill my prophecy on what my opinion is in the other part of this conversation. But I thought it was interesting. I started seeing more Benedict Alford jokes the deeper you went into this. And I don't think it was all that clever. I think it was that they were more and more pissed that they had to deal, Ohio State fans, with a running backs coach. And remember, and the hiring cycle and all this, remember, there have been a lot of names, right? There, Oklahoma's coach, running backs coach, Stan Drayton, former Ohio State running backs and wide receivers coach, now at Temple as a head coach. I mean, there were Gillespie from Alabama. I mean, if you have a running back coach agent out there, he's probably significantly richer today if you know somebody that represents running backs coaches, because a lot of agents made a lot of running backs coaches a lot of money. But Ryan Day finally pulled the trigger, finally was able to reel in a candidate here, and it is Carlos Locklyn, who spent the last 2 years at Oregon. A year before that, he was at Western Kentucky. And that's really his on-field coaching experience with a dedicated position. Before that, it was 4 years in kind of support roles in college football. As we start, though, may I tell you what I absolutely love about this hire?
Sure.
The man is a full-blown unit. The man is I mean, he's just built. He's just, every picture I see in him, and I don't know that he's all that muscular. I really don't know. He could be a ball of butter, but the man just looks like an impressive physical human being that would bounce your ass out of a bar if you got a little too lippy one day.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely he's a massive dude. I don't know if I want to mess with him if I'm in that running back room.
He has no neck. There's no neck. There's
that's how you know.
Whatever this muscle
he's doing a lot of shrugs.
Yeah,
he's doing a lot of those shrug lifts.
Yeah,
we used to, when I was in high school, we used to have a coach who would he'd work out with us, and I feel like the entire time he would just do shrugs, and we thought it was like the most badass thing ever. He just would stand there and do shrugs for like the entire workout, and he had the same sort of thing, like no neck whatsoever. You don't want to mess with a guy who has no neck.
Yeah, that guy's literally insane. What that guy's done to get no neck is just stand in the mirror and do shrugs for 2 hours at a time.
Yeah, and I can't speak to like knowing a ton about Locklyn. Obviously, I've read some things. I know he helped Oregon's rushing attack when it was 24th, I think, in 2021 before he came in, and then the following year he jumped it up to 12th. This last season, it took a little bit of a dip and was back to like 30th. But he certainly has left an impact. I know he helped land Bucky Irving, who's been a pretty good back for them in Oregon, and I think he seems to be sort of a guy on the rise. I also think if you're looking for some sort of when you get a hire like this that maybe we're not as familiar with, like there's a certain names that maybe we knew a little bit more about, guys that maybe been with Ohio State before or whatever. When it's a name that you're less familiar with, I always think it's important to realize like the program that they're coming from, and you're getting a guy who's coming from Oregon, where Dan Lanning is considered one of the top coaches in the game right now. I mean, we had the debate at the end of the season, like who is the best coach in the Big Ten, and we both kind of debated or toiled over a little bit over Dan Lanning, thinking that he's one of the better minds right now in the game. So I think that matters. Like you're getting a guy who clearly was respected enough to come to a program that's back on the rise in terms of their success and being able to win football games, and a coach who's kind of taken this new era by storm. So I think that matters as well. But yeah, I don't know that I can sit here and give you like, well, I give this hire an A or I give this hire a B, but I think it does certainly cool down the masses that were panicking over who was going to fill this role. I kind of talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago. I don't know that it mattered like that they needed to fill it quickly, or I mean, I knew they would, but like I don't know that you needed to get like the most known name or a person who has ties to the Buckeyes program, particularly for this year, because I think you have two veteran backs who kind of, you know what you're going to get out of those guys. And I don't think like Tony Alford leaving wasn't going to, shift their perspective on things. Maybe Judkins because he's not here, but like Trayvon Henderson, he came back because he's a Buckeye. He wants to finish his career here. He wants to try to improve his draft stock and go chase these things that he hasn't been able to accomplish in his career yet. But yeah, I mean, like you care about that on the recruiting front, and that was the biggest thing. People were like, oh, what does this mean for recruiting? And are they going to miss out on some guys that Tony Alford was recruiting? Because I forget the names off the top of my head, but there was a couple guys who he had been linked to trying to bring in. But I also saw this week, as you get some of these rumors about recruits and guys who are interested in Ohio State and they feel pretty good about, 5-star running back Jordan Davison is still being like crystal ball to Ohio State right now. So we'll see how that all pans out. But I like the idea that you're getting a guy from a coach that's obviously on the rise and part of one of the more prominent programs in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of concern about, could Alford flip a couple of these guys to Michigan? And the reality is, like, I really can't blame Carlos Locklyn. I can't even really blame Ryan Day. Like, Tony Alford left. And, I mean, theoretically, I'm sure you could have gone to him and say, well, we'll match the salary and we'll give, but, like, I don't even know that the money was why he left. I think he wanted to try and get more on his plate and set himself up, for the future and head coach and all that. So, like, I'm not worried about losing individual recruits. What Bucky does have to prove, and it's tough to prove it this year, Bucky. I was saying Bucky Irving. What Carlos does have to prove is he does have to prove that he can reel in a big fish. And when I say big fish, it's not about 5-star, 4-star. Those are going to come at Ohio State. It's picking the right one. And I will say that is something that I think you can say consistently Tony Alford did. If he had one or two guys in any given class, he was going to find a guy that made a difference. We certainly have seen that with Trayvon Henderson. There are countless other names. And so, yeah, I also would like to see them keep Dallas Hayden happy long term, because I think he's a future stud as soon as like next year, maybe even this year in like a limited role. But that would be another one. Now, like, to me, it's about, all right, what running backs do you retain that you currently have? And then on top of it, when we finally see your big fish hit that field, did you choose the right one? And that's anywhere from 2 to 3 years down the road. So in that way, Carlos has some time.
Yeah, and I think what's also the other thing that I think adds pressure for him is that Ohio State has always kind of been known as, and for better or for worse, because football's changed over the years. And I do think in recent years, part of the problem has been that the identity people associate with Ohio State football from just decades and decades of being this tough-nosed running football team and all these different things, that hasn't been there. And I think a lot of people equate that to why they've lost to Michigan 3 years in a row and haven't had the success that they normally do. And there's probably some truth to that. I mean, what was the stat going into the Michigan game this year? Like, the team that's won the running battle has won the game, like each game of the last like decade or whatever the hell it was. So like that definitely matters. And it goes back to like the winning in the trenches thing, which that's not necessarily Locklyn's job. That's on, Justin Fry to kind of get those guys in order and get that sorted out. But I think the identity of this team always still kind of being this bygone attitude of, well, the Ohio State Buckeyes are a running football team, and that's how we win football games. the receivers are nice and all that, but we got to be able to run the football. It goes back to what you're saying. Like, you got to land a big fish who can kind of keep that identity going and be able to provide that for you, because I think people just associate that with this program. I mean, you're talking about the program that had Archie Griffin and Eddie George and Ezekiel Elliott. Like, you think back to all these great running backs, and Trevion Henderson has a chance to kind of put the finishing touches on a memorable running career as a running back at the school as well. If he pulls off a great season, maybe he's in the Heisman conversation, maybe, helps them win a national championship or something like that. Like, he'll be the next great kind of guy in line. So there is a history there that he's got to kind of go in and try to maintain as he steps into this role as well. So I think that does add a little bit of pressure, but you're right. Like, what is he going to do on the recruiting trail? What is he going to do to land that big fish that can be that next great running back and be a catalyst for this program? That's, I think, what everyone's going to kind of have to wait and see.
Well, and I think the fact that it felt like there were 27 different front runners in the clubhouse, I think a fair amount.
Nick Wilson, Spencer German.
I was approached, and then it turns out they were like, "Have you ever run before? It's running backs." And I was like,
"Is that a requirement? You have to have run at some point.
I have to have done more than like heavy walking in the last
or the high school fitness test where they made you run the mile. You had to
Oh no, that wasn't happening either. But no, they were like, "Have you run before?"
Did you guys not have that in Ohio?
I'm sure we did, but I think they looked at me and they were like, "Nah, that's okay. We get it." That's not that you're not going to
in New York. That was like the thing. There was like a high school fitness, or I don't even know if maybe it was high school, maybe it was like middle school, but you had to like run the mile in under a certain amount of time. You had to there's all these little things that they made you like check off. We did this whole build up to it every year. It was the goofiest thing.
Good luck to that, I would say. Yes. No, and no. Those are my answers for this test. I'll go sit over there and read a book.
Pull-ups was another one.
I don't mind running, by the way. I never minded running, but I ran with a purpose. There's a difference. I hated suicides in the football field, but if you ask me to pull out of the left tackle spot and destroy somebody off the line, I love that, because that was about.
You just needed a little bit motivation. So you just needed a little motivation.
No. I needed purpose. If you told me why I was running, but if you're just like, "Hey, go run over there," I'd be like, "Hey, go blow it out your ass." Like, from the time I was little, I remember the teacher being like, "We really need to run here," and I'm like, "What? Huh? No, I don't think we need to." I turned into Woody Allen at 8, apparently. What are we talking about? I don't have a great Woody Allen. Let's just stop that right now. But my point is, I don't think any Ohio State fan really knows if this is a good hire. I think we're just more relieved the process is over.
Agreed. And I don't know, Nick. Like, I've kind of subscribed. This is like across the board. I've gotten so far away from the making rash analysis on any hire from like a coaching standpoint. And I think it's just hard for certain sports. Like in college football or the NFL, you might be able to say, okay, well, I think this guy who's this innovative offensive mind, I think he's a good hire because we've heard some good things about like what they're going to do. I also think in football, you at least have like defined roles that you can look at and say, okay, this guy was a running backs coach, or this guy was a receivers coach, or this guy was an offensive coordinator. Here's some of the stats that back what he's done. I think in other sports, it's a lot harder, like the NBA, MLB, when there's a managerial hire or whatever. I think it's hard to really know at all if a guy's going to be good or not. So, and I think that still applies to some of these other positions or just position group coaches in general. Like I'm not going to sit here and make any just like off the rip, like, "Oh man, I love this hire. It's great." Like I think it's okay to approach it. Like it's okay to approach many hires at across the sports world as just kind of like a wait and see thing. Like, there's some reasons to be optimistic coming from Dan Lanning's program. Seemed like he did some nice things there, but like it's okay if we have to kind of say, well, let's wait and see. And obviously coming to Ohio State, there's a lot of expectations that come with that. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And he's now got to sort of prove that he can live up to that. But it's not like Oregon had no pressure either. So we'll see. I think that's kind of a fair approach to take to it.
There's also a little part of me that just loves getting one over Dan Lanning. I mean, because I like Dan. Like I think he's a hell of a football coach, as you know. So anytime you can take a coach from a coach that you really like and respect, it's like, all right, we got that win. That's all that matters. We got that dub. I'm going to take that dub, and we're going to take that to the bank. So,
and we talked about that mattering for, we joked about Tony Alford taking secrets with him. Oregon's on the schedule this year, so I'm sure he has some insight into what they're going to want to do. Like that kind of helps Ohio State's cause. I'm not saying he's coming in with like the bag and he has all the answers, but like we always make a bigger deal of that stuff than maybe it really is. But I think we made a big deal out of it with Alford going to Michigan. I think it certainly could be the reverse here, where you're getting some intel and insight into what Oregon maybe wants to do in the first year that they're joining the Big Ten, and you're going to have a chance to play them on your schedule.
Carlos Locklyn is the new Ohio State running backs coach. Is this a good hire? Do you think this is a good hire? I think we both think it was about as good as it was going to get given when the opening came up. So more on that, and Deion Sanders continues to say the darndest things. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. All right, guys, while spring practice rages on, while there's a new Ohio State running backs coach, as you heard earlier in the podcast, we're still at the point where, that the perfect part of the spring where, because spring practice rolls on, we do get to hear from some of the better and bigger characters, and none is bigger. There's no bigger character in college football than Deion Sanders. And fresh off a real strong 5-win season, that several weeks into last season, people anointed him as the
started 4-0 though.
Hey, you started good for you. Now Deion is making waves again. And listen, when like you and I didn't talk about this, but the Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter thing. Oh, there's going to be an Eli Manning. It was like, that's just Deion is always in the business of Deion, which is great, or in the business of pumping up people.
What I thought was the funniest thing about that was that he basically just named all the teams that he played for.
Yeah.
He was like, there's going to be, we're going to preference certain teams. And then he was like, like Atlanta and Dallas and Baltimore and San Francisco. And it was like, so literally you're just going to preference all the teams that you played for. So you're like not even giving them a choice. It's like, okay, you can only play for the teams that I know you should play for. And that's it. Like, that doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't remember him saying Washington, where he also played.
No, he did say Washington too. Actually, I
so
forgot
it's not
that
even
one.
about the quality of the organization. It's just
that's the one that's funny, because it's like, yeah, you played there, and so you're gonna have some. I guess you're gonna be somewhat impartial to. Okay, I like Washington because I played there. But of all the places you played, like, that was the most dysfunctional all these years. And I guess now you have a new owner, so you're hoping it's going to be different. But he truly was just basing this off of the places that he played, which is the goofiest thing about it.
Now, his latest comments, which you can explain a little bit more here, have to do with old Deion's roster building. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. So there was an article written, and the guy he actually said, in classic Deion fashion, like he said, whoever wrote this, I don't remember who wrote it, but if you're here, if you're in the room, like, feel free to just like raise your hand like we did in grade school and we get the teacher to call. It was like he's always got to make this like sideshow about the people in the room who are writing these stories and stuff, which is kind of I like it, and then it's also kind of just dumb at the same time. But and this guy wrote a story about how he doesn't really do recruiting trips. And so Deion kind of went on this spiel about why he doesn't do recruiting trips and how his emphasis is always on the portal. So we'll play the clip here. It's kind of a longer clip. It's almost 3 minutes long, but it's worth every second of it. And there's a lot to sort of dissect on the other side of it.
Okay. My approach, it's totally different than many coaches' approach. Sometimes I'm a businessman as well, so I try to save our university money every darn chance I get. So for me to go to, let's just say I'm going to Florida and I'm visiting whatever school, IMG. You don't think those coaches are going to be a little upset if I don't come by the school down the street? You don't think it's going to be pandemonium if I'm going to get naysayed if I don't go another 45 minutes? Then if I go to that one, then I go, well, I didn't come to that school. Now the coach is mad, so he's not going to let the kid come because he's mad because I chose that, go to that school over that school. See, other coaches, they could do that, but I can't. I can't. And I've really pretty much done a personal survey. I really, truly, in all my heart, believe that parents don't want me at their house. They want to come see my house. They want to see how I live, how I get down. They want to see what I got going on, what God has done in my life. I know when I was in college, I did not want Bobby Bowden in my house because I knew after 7 o'clock it was going to be rats and roaches on parade doing their thing. So that was just straight up, honestly. I didn't. So that never transpired. That never happened for me. And we target mostly guys that's in the portal. When do you make visits to portal guys' homes? Anybody do that? Do they do that? I don't do. Anybody? Have you guys heard of that? I don't. I think when a guy is in his 20s and he has 1 or 2 more shots, he don't give a darn about the picture. He don't give a darn about the parade that you want to take him on. He wants to know, okay, how are you going to use me? How can you help me get to the league? And what am I going to get paid? That's it. That's the world we live in now. I have never heard one guy say, I chose this college because this coach came by my crib. Have you? It's different now. The parents, I love them. And I want to show them Boulder. I want them to see this and how beautiful it is and why I'm so eager and how much I love this city and this state and this team. I want them to see that because guess what? That's where the kid is coming. The kid coming here. Going there is just showcase for me. That's just blowing money. It's blowing a bag. Don't make sense. And I can't do the things other coaches can do. You know why? I'm Coach Prime.
A lot of humility there, a lot of respect. Yeah, that was prime Deion Sanders.
Prime.
Yeah, that is just, almost at this point, it's like pure performance art because that was some bullshittery of the highest level.
So I want to preface this by saying I can appreciate some of the perspective that he brings, like where he makes the comment about how he didn't want Bobby Bowden in his house because it was rats. Like, I think that's he has a different perspective than I think other people would on like being on the other side of it, right? Like we all think, oh yeah, coach shows up to your house, but like if you're embarrassed by where you live, I can understand why maybe your recruit's like, I don't know if I want coach coming here. So I do think there's probably some truth to that specific part of it. But I did think the fact that he prefaced that by saying like, I've conducted a personal survey. First of all, anytime somebody says they conducted a personal survey, they're full of shit. They did not conduct a personal survey.
What I believe he's saying is he's done his own research. I believe that's
those two things basically are the same. But I like for him to say a player doesn't pick a school because ex-coach showed up at their house, I think that's just patently false. Like I think part of the
we hear it literally every year.
Look at Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh did some of the goofiest stuff to recruit kids. He would sleep over in the room, like bring his own sleeping bag, roll it up with rope around it, and spend the night in the kid's room and talk till midnight about whatever, the birds, the bees, I don't know. And then the kid would come to Michigan the next year. Like, you can't tell me that stuff. I understand that, yeah, the money's top line now and that, yeah, the school and what you're kind of providing for them when they come to the school, that obviously matters as well. But you can't tell me that like at the core of all of this still is relationship building and that doing that by going to visit the parents, going to their house and seeing them and being there for them and seeing how they live to be like, hey, we want to get you out of this situation, that stuff doesn't matter at all. And I understand why he uses the portal as much as he does. And his point on like, well, portal kids, you don't go to their houses. Okay, fine. I can understand that. But in the same breath though, the teams that have the most success aren't only using the portal. You have to be able to, it's just like building through the draft in the NFL. The teams that go out and they just spend in free agency every year and they spend all this big money and everyone's like, oh man, this team got a lot better. Those teams generally don't end up having the success that we think they're going to have. And then they go, when you develop through the draft and you build through the draft and then you add pieces through free agency, That's how it usually works. In college, I think we're seeing the same trend. You got to have your base. You got to build through recruiting. You got to build through these great classes that come in, and then you add ancillary pieces through the portal. He's doing it the opposite, and that's fine. And maybe it works out. But I can't wrap my head around the idea that he thinks like he can't do what other coaches do. Like, I just don't think you want to do what other coaches do.
I think I think that's the brass tacks. Like, I want to save the university money. That is the biggest single lie. And not a damn person believes him.
No.
Nobody believes. Yeah. The guy who wouldn't go to Colorado unless it was the all-time contract high, right? Remember they had to get like special approval. They didn't have the money when they hired Deion.
Yeah.
They had, but they're like, we'll get it.
And then he paid for himself with the win streak they went on to start the year. But yeah,
with those 4 wins they won this year. But no, I mean, listen, I don't dislike Deion, but it's just stuff like this. Like, nobody believes it's about saving money. It's about you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And here's the problem. Coaches that don't want to do the recruiting usually don't end up building winning teams. I mean, Chip Kelly talked about the overwhelming nature of being a head coach. Dan Mullen, reportedly has not really embraced full-time coaching after the Florida exit because it doesn't really like recruiting anymore. It's a 24/7 job. So I just don't know how. And I think it's a fascinating social experiment, how any coach can be like, hey, what arguably might be the most important part of my job, which is recruiting the right high school players and using that as your long-term base, and then using the portal to supplement that. I think it's fascinating that there's head coaches just like, I don't want to, so I won't.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and more importantly, so I'm not going to really use players from that spot. It's not even, I don't want to go there. Like, they don't even have invites to come to Deion. Like that, it is. And no. We'll get like 2 or 3 of you, or 10 of you, or whatever, and then the rest of the kids are gonna be in the portal. That's a big boom or bust move by Deion.
Like he talks about how if he goes to one school and I don't go to another school, like that coach is gonna be pissed. I think it's more of a slap in the face to all those coaches that you're just like, yeah, I'm just not gonna show up at all. Like, I'm not going to show up to any schools. So then how are any of these coaches going to send their kids to Deion if he's not even showing up to any schools? Like, I don't understand that at all. And yeah, like to your point on building the base, like if you're building strictly through the portal, and like I said, there's been some teams, I forget what team it was. There was a team out of Texas, I can't remember who it was, that they like went straight portal guys, that got a whole bunch of portal guys, and they actually had a pretty good season this past year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, I don't remember. And so like it can work in like in flash in a pan where you bring a bunch of guys in and they just take off and soar. But I think the other thing is like it's almost like the old saying of once a cheater, always a cheater. Like if somebody cheats on you, they're probably going to do it again, right? I'm simplifying this, but if you're only getting guys in the portal, to me, guys that you get through the portal are always going to have in the back of their mind, like, well, if it doesn't work out here, or I'm not getting enough money, I can just go back in the portal. And I understand there's like a lure to Coach Prime. People are kind of they're attracted to him because of the status he brings and this NFL superstar that he used to be, and the college player that he used to be, and all these different things. So maybe that's enough to keep a guy. But we all know, like, Colorado's resources, like we said, they couldn't even pay Deion the contract that they signed him to. So it's not like Colorado has the resources to go up against a Bama or an Ohio State or whatever. And there'll always be kids that maybe just go strictly because it's Deion. Like Travis Hunter, for example, he clearly wanted to play for Deion Sanders. Great. But I think those are going to be few and far between. And so if you're only getting portal guys, I think in the back of those portal guys that transfer to the portal, I think a lot of times in the back of their mind, there's always that thought that, well, if I don't like it here or the money's not where I want it to be, I'll just go back in the portal and get more money elsewhere. And I think that's what we saw with Caden Proctor, right? Like, okay, I can get more money back at Bama. I'm just going to go back. So I don't know that he gets like, I just don't know how that philosophy is going to like fly like long-term with him. And I think it's probably why that'll probably be his demise as a head coach in terms of how high he can actually get in the college ranks. Now, maybe some program like FSU or somebody, I mean, FSU is fine right now, but maybe there's some big program that's like, we just want the economy that comes with Deion and to see what happens in the same way Colorado did, but maybe they have more resources and they give it a shot. But I don't know, man. Like, this just seems so short-sighted. It is very Deion, like you said, but it really does feel like he just doesn't want to do the things that he's saying these other coaches can do, and he apparently can't. It's wild.
Yeah. I think, listen, if it works out, you'll see more people trying to emulate it. If it doesn't, you're going to see people say, see, that's why we don't do it that way. All right, guys, that does it for the show. We will be back later in the week as we get you ready and continue to get you ready for the spring game. But please make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, 923thefan.com, the free Odyssey app. Have I mentioned Apple? Follow Sons of the Shoe. We do appreciate it. Subscribe to the 923 The Fan YouTube channel. And please make sure to like our videos as well. Leave us comments. We love your little comments. Spencer, good stuff, buddy.
Always a pleasure, Nick. Can't wait to do it again.
Go Bucks.